Fish that won't spoil without a fridge sounds fake, but in the Philippines, it's normal. In this video, you'll discover hidden techniques passed down for generations, used daily by coastal families, and rarely shown on camera. What looks like magic is real life, and you're about to see exactly how it's done. What if the ocean could be folded into a meal and saved for a year without a single machine? At dawn along Philippine shorelines, the answer still glitters on bamboo racks. Fish split open, rubbed with salt, and laid beneath a white-hot sky until sea and sun remake them. This is daing, also called tuyo, a way of holding onto the catch long after the boats are pulled ashore. Long before ice reached fishing villages, preservation decided who ate and who went hungry. By the time Spanish chroniclers began writing about coastal life in the 1500s, drying fish was already woven into daily survival across Luzon, the Visayas, and Mindanao. Monsoon seasons could close waters for weeks. Typhoons crushed nets and kept boats on land. Salt and sunlight became insurance. Families cured bangus, galunggong, danggit, and puzit on woven trays. Children turned fish in the heat. Elders judged readiness by smell and snap. The secret is simple and unforgiving. Salt pulls moisture from flesh. Sun finishes the work. Bacteria needs water. When it disappears, spoilage follows it into silence. After hours or days in direct light, depending on size and weather, the fish emerges lighter, tougher, and concentrated. Flavor deepens, oils thicken. A raw catch becomes a traveling meal that can cross islands in a sack. Walk past a drying yard at noon and the air tells its own story. Brine on the wind, heat humming on tin roofs, gulls crying from posts. The fish change color from silver to bronze, while flies are chased away with palm fronds. By evening, racks are carried inside, guarded from dew. In the morning, they return to the sun, patient again. Daing never left. It rides buses to city markets in plastic-wrapped stacks. It waits on shelves in sari-sari stores. It sizzles at dawn in frying pans with garlic rice and eggs, a breakfast that wakes the house. In provinces like Cebu and Iloilo, danggit at Christmas is not a luxury, but a memory you can chew. Even now, when freezers hum in coastal towns, drying continues. Electricity fails, storms come, boats miss their window. Daing stays ready, and somewhere nearby, another fire is lit. Smoke curls low and slow around a new catch, giving birth to a darker aroma and a different kind of patience. The sea has not finished teaching us how to keep it. Before the sun climbs high over coastal Philippines, thin blue smoke already curls through fishing villages. You smell it before you see it. Wood, salt, and sea mixing in the air. This is the hour when tinapa is born. Tinapa began as a coastal answer to a brutal problem. Fish spoiled fast in tropical heat, and salt alone could not always save the day. By the time Spanish records appeared in the 1565, smoking was already part of island life. Families in Batangas, Cavinti, and the Visayas had long known that slow smoke could stretch a single night's catch into days of meals. Bangus, galunggong, tuna, and even sardines were cleaned at dawn and laid open on bamboo racks, ready for fire. The method looks simple, and it is anything but careless. Coconut husks, guava wood, and mangrove branches are chosen for the right scent and heat. Fish are brined lightly first, then smoked low and slow. The smoke dries the skin, seals the flesh, and fills every fiber with protective compounds that block bacteria. Fat drips away, moisture fades, flavor sinks deep. By the time the fish turns amber and firm, it no longer fears the sun. Tinapa never chased luxury. It chased next week. Farmers packed it in banana leaves before heading to fields. Sailors tucked it into boats bound for Bohol or Palawan. During World War II, smoked fish fed families when rice thinned and markets fell silent. It became survival with scent, hunger softened by smoke. Today, tinapa still fills wet markets. It still perfumes provincial kitchens. You find it flaked into garlic rice, chopped into omelets, tucked into pandesal at dawn. City families buy it vacuum-sealed now, but the taste carries the same past. Salt on lips, ash on hands, smoke clinging to hair. There is pride in it too. Each region swears by its wood, its timing, its thickness of cut. A grandmother in Leyte will shake her head at the way Manila smokes fish. A fisherman in Pangasinan will argue his tinapa lasts longer. And when the fire cools and the last rack is lifted, another transformation begins nearby. Not in smoke, but in silence. Inside jars where fish soften slowly under salt and time. The next preservation story trades flame for fermentation, and the scent turns even deeper. A sharp, tidal scent rises before you ever see it. One spoon opens a doorway to the sea, to docks slick with spray, to baskets of fish glimmering in sun and salt. This is bagoong, the fermented fish paste that taught coastal families in the Philippines how to make time itself part of their pantry. Long before cons or ice, people along the shores of Luzon, Mindoro, and the Visayas faced the same problem every dawn. The boats came back heavy with sardines, anchovies, and small mackerel, yet the heat could ruin a catch in hours. When Spanish sailors first watched life unfold along Philippine coasts, they didn't find empty nets. They found jars of fish preserved for the days when the sea turned cruel. Clay jars were filled at the edge of the sea. Fish went in whole or chopped, salt followed, then a quiet wait under woven lids and bright skies. Fermentation does all the work. Salt draws out moisture and blocks harmful bacteria. Friendly microbes step in and begin breaking the fish down, slowly turning flesh into something deeper and louder in the flavor. Weeks pass, then months. The paste darkens and softens. Oils rise to the top. The smell sharpens into something unmistakable. What remains is protein that keeps without ice and flavor that refuses to fade. Every region shaped bagoong its own way. Ilocos cooks favored a thicker, bolder paste. In parts of the Visayas, fish were fermented longer for a stronger bite. Inland communities carried jars home from market days as if they were treasures. During lean seasons and typhoon months, bagoong could turn plain rice into a meal that felt complete. Today, it still rules kitchens. It sizzles with garlic on stovetops. It hides inside dipping sauces. It anchors vegetable dishes with a salty depth. No factory seasoning can match. Grandmothers still judge its color and aroma by memory alone. And just when you think fermentation is the final word, fire arrives. Smoke curls through bamboo kitchens. Oil drips and hisses. Fish turns amber over low flames. The next preservation story does not wait in jars. It hangs in the air. What if a pot of fish could outlast the heat of the tropics with nothing but sour steam and slow fire? No ice, no machines. Just a sharp scent rising from simmering vinegar and the promise that dinner would still be safe tomorrow. Along the coasts and rivers of the Philippines, pakso na isda grew from necessity. Long before ice plants arrived in port towns in the early 1900s, fisher families in places like Pampanga, Bicol, and Iloilo worked with what they had. Buckets of milkfish, mackerel, or tilapia came back at noon under a sun that turned fresh, catch risky in hours. The answer was a clay pot, native cane vinegar, garlic, and ginger. By the late 1500s, the Spanish observers wrote about local cooking that relied on sour broths to keep flesh sound. They did not invent this method, they simply noticed it had already mastered the climate. The secret is acid and heat. Vinegar drops the pH, so bacteria struggle to grow. A rolling simmer drives out moisture that microbes crave. Fish bones soften, flesh tightens. The liquid clears and sharpens. When the pot cools, the fish sits bathed in its own protective bath. A covered earthen jar could ride out a day or two without spoiling. In breezy kitchens near the sea, sometimes longer. Listen to the pot and you hear it work. Bubbles flick at the surface. Bay leaves release a camphor note. Peppercorns crack open like tiny fireworks. The air stings the nose. Hunger follows. By nightfall, the fish tastes deeper than it did at dawn. Paksu never stayed in the past. Today, it lives in cramped city kitchens and bamboo homes alike. Leftovers are not a problem. They are an invitation. Reheat the next day, and the broth grows bolder. Some families fry the fish after the vinegar bath, turning it crisp at the edges and silky inside. Restaurants in Manila keep it on the menu as a memory dish. Seafarers pack it for journeys where cold storage fails. And when the pot finally empties, another method waits beyond the smoke, one that trades sour vapor for salty wind and wide blue sky. The next story rises where fish meet sun and patience. What if a stew could outlast the sea itself? In the humid kitchens of the Bicol region, where volcanic rain falls thick and heat never loosens its grip, families developed a way to hold fish past its natural limit. The answer simmered slowly in clay pots, carried by the sharp breath of vinegar and coconut milk. Kinunat is not a single recipe. It is a method shaped by coastline weather, fishing seasons, and the need to waste nothing. Long before refrigeration reached Luzon, coastal households learned that acid was a shield. Fresh shark, ray, or catfish would be rubbed with salt, then slowly cooked in cane vinegar until the flesh tightened and whitened. Heat sealed the meat. Vinegar lowered the EH. Together, they stopped spoilage. In mountain villages, fish arrived already hours old, carried by foot from the sea. Kinuno turned that delay into safety. What could not be eaten that day could be reheated again tomorrow in the same sour bath. Cooking did not end when the fire went out. Coconut milk followed vinegar, thick and fragrant, wrapping fish in a fat-rich cloak that held flavor as much as it held moisture. Ginger and chilies were not decoration. They cut odor. They discouraged insects. They kept the air from claiming what the sea had given. A pot set over low heat could last for days, refreshed each morning with more vinegar, the broth growing deeper with memory. By the 1700s, Bicolano households were already known among traders for vinegar-rich fish dishes that resisted rot on journeys between villages. Spanish friars wrote of sour stews that stayed edible long after fresh food failed. Kinuno traveled inland with salt and rice, surviving floods and dry months alike. Today, it remains a marker of place. In coastal towns, it tastes of sea. In upland kitchens, it tastes of distance. Street markets still sell it steaming. Homes still argue over how sour is right. Some eat it fiery, some soft. The pot still tells time better than any clock. And as the last spoonful burns warm in the throat, another preservation waits in the wings. Not sour, not simmered. Smoke takes its turn with the fish next, and the air itself becomes the keeper. Before markets had ice, before boats carried coolers, the sea's most fragile parts were given a second life. Deep in coastal kitchens of Mindanao and the Sulu archipelago, fish livers and roe were never thrown away. They were transformed, pressed, salted, left to change. This is where daing was born, a paste dark as night and sharp as memory. Spanish records from the 1600s describe coastal Filipinos preserving not just flesh, but the insides of fish, mixed with salt until they become sauce. In fishing towns across Zamboanga, Basilan, and Tawi-Tawi, families learned that entrails spoiled first, so they treated them first. Fresh viscera from tuna, anchovies, and reef fish were cleaned, massaged with heavy salt, and sealed in jars. The tropics did the rest. Heat became an ally. Bacteria broke down proteins into liquid gold. Weeks turned into months. What began as offal melted into a thick, savory essence. The smell was strong. The flavor was deeper. A spoonful could turn plain rice into something alive. No flame needed, no cold required, just salt and time. Daing kept nutrition where hunger would have erased it. Coastal villages faced lean seasons when storms swallowed fishing days. Jars waited on shelves for that moment. When nets came back empty, daing filled bowls. Children dipped fingers into it and swallowed the sea itself. Today, the paste still simmers quietly in home kitchens. Some families guard their own recipes, more salt or less, sunlight or shade. Modern chefs now drizzle it onto grilled eggplant or stir it into coconut stews. Markets sell it in reused bottles wrapped with tape like secret parcels. It remains stubbornly local. You will not find it neatly bottled in malls. Daing does not like anonymity. Its power is in what it rescued. Nothing wasted ever again. And yet, fish can be preserved without salt alone. There is another method where smoke writes its signature on flesh, where kitchens turn into small forests of drifting haze. Salted fish hanging in sunlight looks simple, but lamayo begins before the sun ever touches the flesh. Why would anyone soak fresh fish in vinegar and garlic first, instead of salting it straight away? Along the coasts of Philippines, families learned that flavor itself could become a shield against time. Lamayo was shaped by island life, where the sea gives generously, then falls silent without warning. Fishermen in Cebu and Leyte needed a method that worked fast on hot afternoons, when a full catch could spoil before nightfall. So fish were cleaned, sliced, and bathed in vinegar, crushed garlic, pepper, and salt. The bite of acid tightened the flesh and slowed decay. The salt drew moisture out. The spices forced insects to keep their distance. Then came the sun. Not days of drying like hard doing, but just enough heat to toughen the outside while leaving the inside tender. Lamayo stays soft, perfumed, and ready for the pan. It was never meant to last a year. It was meant to survive the week when nets came back empty. This balance came from long watching. Island cooks saw that vinegar alone preserved food for short journeys. They noticed that sun alone could spoil a rack of fish if the sea breeze died. They learned that together, heat and acid worked faster than salt by itself. By the time Spanish traders arrived in the 1500s through the Manila galleon routes, Lamayo was already part of daily life in fishing towns across Mindanao and the Visayas. Every step leaves a mark. The vinegar sharpens the mouth. The garlic sweetens under fire. The sun seals flavor inside. When Lamayo hits hot oil, the skin snaps and the kitchen fills with sour, salty smoke. It smells like shorelines at noon. It tastes like the sea after rain. Today, Lamayo is still prepared in backyards and beach houses. Some vendors sell it barely dried. Others let it toughen for days. Families choose by habit, by memory, by how hungry tomorrow looks. But vinegar and sunlight tell only one coastal story. Somewhere nearby, another fire is burning fish without flame, and another cloud of smoke is rising inland. A clay jar sits in the shade. Inside, fish slowly disappears into rice. Days pass, then weeks. What comes back out is not rot, not ruin, but a sharp, sour aroma that tells you food will outlive the heat. In many Philippine kitchens, burong isda has always been a promise that tomorrow will still taste like something. This technique grew strongest in central Luzon, especially in Pampanga, Bulacan, and Tarlac. Rivers like the Pampanga River flooded wide rice fields each year. Fish came in fast, so did the risk of spoilage. Long before the Spanish reached Luzon during the 1500s, villagers learned that salt and cooked rice could shelter fish from time itself. Rice was never just a meal. It became a living vessel that transformed raw catch into preserved food. The method is simple but alive. Fresh fish is cleaned and heavily salted. Cooked rice, cooled and fluffed by hand, wraps around each piece. The mixture is pressed into jars where air can barely enter. Within days, lactobacillus from the rice wakes up and begins its work. Sugar becomes acid. Acid becomes armor. The jar grows warm. The smell deepens. Fish softens into something almost creamy. A sharp tang rises, telling the family the food is safe. Every region gave it a flavor of its own. In Pampanga, garlic and red rice turned the mixture pink and bold. In Ilocos, the salt bit harder and the aroma ran stronger. Some families buried jars half in the earth to keep temperatures steady. Others tucked them near hearths where quiet warmth kept fermentation moving through rainy weeks. Today, burong isda still appears on tables with fried eggplant or green mango. It is sold in wet markets wrapped in plastic tubs. Modern refrigerators exist, but this food remains. Not from nostalgia alone, but because its taste carries days when rivers rose and rice ripened together. Listen closely in a provincial kitchen, and you will hear the lid lift with care. Steam does not rise. A scent does. It tells a story of fields, floods, and hands that knew time could be trained. And somewhere close by, fish is being smoked. A different fire, a darker aroma. Another chapter waits in the air. What happens when the sea gives more fish than one village can eat in a day? Along the coasts of Luzon and the Visayas, this question shaped a quiet kitchen tradition that has survived storms, wars, and longboat journeys. Rellenong isda in oil did not begin as a fancy dish. It began as insurance against hunger. By the late Spanish period in the 1800s, Filipino homes already relied on preservation methods that went beyond drying and fermenting. In fishing towns from Batangas to Iloilo, cooks discovered that gently cooking fish until dry, then sealing it under hot oil, could stretch its life for weeks. In some homes, the fish was stuffed with sautéed garlic, onions, and local herbs before frying. In others, it was simply cleaned, salted, and lowered into a bubbling pot until the flesh tightened and the skin turned bronze. After cooling, the fish disappeared beneath a blanket of oil poured straight from the pan. The science is simple, even if the result feels like magic. Moisture invites rot. Heat drives that moisture out. The oil then performs the final seal, blocking air and slowing the work of bacteria. In coastal barrios without ice or electricity, jars of fish resting in oil became a form of savings. Open one and dinner was guaranteed. During the Second World War, this method gained new urgency. Food shortages hit island communities first. Oral histories from Quezon and Panay record families hiding jars in earthen cupboards, saving them for air raid nights when cooking fires could not be lit. A single fish, pulled from oil, reheated with rice, could quiet a household long enough to sleep. Today, reye inong isda in oil still appears in provincial kitchens. Some modern versions add chilies, bay leaves, or coconut oil. In seaside markets, vendors sell bottled fish to travelers as edible memories from home. It is not unusual to find these jars at bus terminals, tightly wrapped, traveling across islands inside backpacks. Ask any old fisher why this method lasted, and the answer comes without romance. Fish does not wait. Hunger does not forgive. Oil, heat, and salt do. And while this fish sleeps peacefully under its golden shield, another Filipino preserve works more quietly, not with fire or oil, but with time itself. The next story dives into fish transformed by rice and patience until it becomes something entirely new. What if survival could be stored in a single clay jar? In the central islands of the Philippines, long before electricity or iceboxes arrived, families scraped together the tiniest fish from their nets and transformed them into something powerful enough to outlast storms, lean months, and shifting seas. That transformation became ginamos, the deeply salted fermented fish paste of the Visayas. Its roots stretch far back across archipelagos touched by the monsoon. Archaeological digs in Negros and Panay reveal early Austronesian earthenware vessels designed specifically for salting small fish. By the time the Katatuan of Majawas rose in Panay in the 1200s, households were already preserving babad, anchovies, and juvenile slipmouths in heavy layers of salt. Nothing was wasted. The smallest catch, too tiny to grill or dry, became the foundation of this paste. The secret lies in controlled fermentation. Fresh fish are mixed generously with salt until each fragment is coated. They are packed into jars or crocks, pressed down to eliminate air pockets, and left in cool corners of the house. Over days or weeks, natural enzymes begin to break the fish down. The mixture softens, darkens, and thickens. What emerges is a paste that can last months without spoiling, especially in the Visayan climate where humidity and heat would ruin most foods in hours. Salt becomes both shield and alchemist. For many Visayan families, ginamos was more than condiments, as it was a dependable protein during seasons when the sea thinned or typhoons ripped through coastal villages. In the 1800s, Spanish trading records listed jars of pescado salado shipped from Iloilo to Cebu and even to Manila, proof that this humble paste had become part of regional trade and identity. Travelers described the unmistakable aroma drifting from kitchen hearths in Bohol, Leyte, and Negros. Today, ginamos threads the past to the present. It seasons stews, brightens vegetables, and anchors the taste of home for millions of Visayans working far from their islands. Some families still prepare it the old way, turning the ritual into memory, slicing tiny fish, packing the jars, waiting for the slow change that only time creates. From sun and salt to smoke and time, every Filipino method turns the ocean into a pantry that outlasts storms and seasons. What you've seen here is only the beginning. Next, we open the cupboards themselves, where jars and tins wait for years and still taste like home.